Hey, Tommy, who's in charge of your life anyway?
Now or in the past? So great question, David, and thanks for the quick hello. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Life Mastery TV. I'm Tommy Stoffel. My partner and fellow clown in this game, David McLeod, is still in Ireland, coming to you from across the Atlantic Ocean. And today we are going to talk about who's in charge of your life. Who is in charge of your life? What is in charge of your life? And the title of today's talk is Change of Command. So David and I are going to dive a little bit deep into, like we usually do, into the deep end of the pool. Talk about what this means. What does being in charge of your life mean? And why can there be a change of command? So David, how you doing in Ireland today?
Well, top of the evening to you, my friend. And yeah, I'm doing well. I've been here now for just about 2 weeks, and I'm ready to fly out. I'm going to be flying home tomorrow. I should be back in my own place on Saturday night, so I'm looking forward to that. But this whole episode's really had a lot of, this whole topic has had a lot of meat for me to think about, because, you know, even though I know I've done a lot of work on stuff like this, the answer that comes up for me often about who's in charge is it's definitely, my ego is definitely got some power. And I notice that about me. And sometimes I wonder, how can I really calm that ego once and for all and put my spirit back in charge? I think that's ultimately what I want to do. And I think that's really what our topic is all about today. What do you think?
What I think and what I feel and what I've been constantly taught is that that's what this whole process is about. Everything we talk about at Life Mastery and Life Matters before that, and every spiritual teaching or teaching of self-awareness or self-realization or getting to know yourself comes down to this core fundamental idea that we need to shift our perspective from, we talk about being a body, mind, and spirit. Well, most of us focus on the body first, and then pay a lot of attention to our mind and what we know and what we think, and then we leave whatever time is left for our spirit. Well, that's what's got to shift, and that's what we're talking about here. Because you're right, David. As long as we're controlled by an egoic mind that's all caught up in the body, and not only physical body but material things and the objects of this earth, then we're going to struggle and we're going to suffer. That's the bottom line message of every great teacher that ever came along. Every big, enlightened being is pointing us to this shift, this change of command.
Yeah, well, I mean, I totally get that. And, certainly, I've done a lot of some of the same work that you have done. And certainly I've been in touch with some of the same teachers even. And the truth is, I still find it challenging to not let my ego run the show. I still find that I am challenged by that effort. And maybe that's just because of one of the things that we talked about before, where we get kind of caught up in the rut. We're used to going down a certain path. We're used to following a particular way of thinking and being. And so it's just easy to get trapped in that path or in that rut and not even know that we're there until something bad, or maybe not bad, but something unpleasant happens, something uncomfortable happens. And then we kind of get that old kick in the butt thing saying, oh, yeah, maybe I should think twice about how I'm showing up. Maybe I should reconnect to who I really am instead of, allowing myself to be in this reactive state.
Eckhart Tolle talks about, when he talks about the ego and somebody being stuck in their ego, his definition of that means that they're totally unaware that their mind and their thoughts and their beliefs are separate than themselves. No separation whatsoever. They have no idea that there is another aspect of themselves, which we've talked about, that essence or that witness. But once you have any degree of awareness, that's awesome. We're on that path. I sat next to this woman on the airplane. I've maybe told the story before, and I told her I do this chatter relaxing work, and she was like a grandma woman, And she was like, it was new to her. And then she bumped the lady next to her 20 minutes later and says, I think I might have chatter. I mean, for the first time in her life, 80 years old, for the first time in her life, she had separated that voice in her head from her. That's huge. Yeah. Just that first bit of separation is amazingly, brilliantly the start of everything. And then from there on, we're on the path, man. Right? We're born into this human race where we're born without that awareness, because most of us are, because that's the way that we're conditioned to believe and to think that everything, you know, think, do, go. So it is a hard path. And there are still times when the ego flares up because it's not gone yet. Mm-hmm. When it's gone, David, you'll know it. And when mine's gone, I'll know it. And then we'll go out there and be able to heal the whole world with a snap of our fingers. Right. Until then, it's still there, and it's gonna act up. And what we're talking about today is we know it's clearing bit by bit by bit. And at some point, maybe we get, you know, if we're talking percentages of the shit that comes out of our head that's like ego, and the stuff that comes out of our head that's, you know, not, then where's that change of command happen? When, you know, but we're working towards it all the time.
Well, clearly, I think what you and I talk about and what we both believe is that ultimately it's our soul that we want to have in charge of our life, that part of ourself that is connected to source, that part of ourselves that is connected to all it is, that part of ourselves that represents who we really are. And this physical body is just a kind of a temporary vessel that allows us to transition around in a physical space. And so, but the ego mind is part of that whole physicality that allows us to navigate in this physical world. And yet most of us, or many of us on this planet anyway, have this idea that maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what we are. We are our bodies. We are our minds. We are our ego. We are all the things that we do. I've heard people say we are the sum of our experiences. You know, I hear these things all the time. And so there are people people I really respect and admire who have beliefs that are very different than mine. And I have one friend, for example, who just the other day was sharing with me. I asked him, I said, what do you think happens at the end of life? He says, I think that when we die, it's all over. That's it. We're done. And I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking, so how can I help a person like that go through this change of command process if he doesn't even believe in an afterlife, if he doesn't even believe in a soul to begin with? That's really where I find myself challenged. How do you respond to people who have that kind of thing going on for themselves?
That is a brilliantly wonderful question, and I want to get to it right now. Another term that popped into my mind is one of these core beliefs of this human race is I think, therefore I am, right? Yeah. What a disservice. And actually, the real quote and the real teaching behind that is quite open and liberating, but that quote itself has been boxed people in. So what do I do? David, that is a matter of, you know, you can't sit down to somebody and say, hey, you know what? You've got a soul. You've got a spirit. So that is a sense of, a lot of people have to hit a wall of suffering. They have to get so bad, something so shitty, and there's no way out with their logic and their ego and their mind and all that maybe they heard about some webinar cast by these Soul Talk guys at some point, and you know what, maybe I need to go listen to something, because everything else I've done in my life has had me hit this freaking wall. I'm tired of hitting this wall. I'm tired of suffering. I'm tired of misery. I'm tired of, you know, fighting with myself all the time and being a bully to myself. And so I'm not sure I do anything to reach those people except be myself. Mm-hmm. There's an energy that we carry about us when we realize this, because that essence of ourself is energy. That essence of ourself, I call it pure energy. It's divine energy, and the more of the ego mind we can clear away, the brighter that energy shines. In either that we're walking around and people can kind of pick up our sense of peace about us, or they pick up, you know, this sense of goodness about us, or that their soul, which exists in them, even if they don't believe it, picks up energetically, picks up the vibration, picks up the frequency, picks up something by other people who are awake and going through this process and awake to the fact that we have a soul and a spirit and that we're working to clear it. And they pick that up unconsciously, subconsciously, if they come in contact with us. And that's the best we can do right now. We can't start telling them to wipe their ego out and to here's what you have to do and here's how you do it, unless they ask for it. And they usually don't ask for it unless they pick up something that they like. They're like, wow, you seem kind of peaceful. What do you do? Boom, doors open, kicking it in, here I come.
Yeah, right.
But they have to open the door.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very interesting to me how, you know, there are people who are just very, very left brain, you know, very logical, sequential, mathematical, physical, you know, everything has to be lined up in a particular order in order to make sense to their logical brain. And yet they seem to forget about this right side that's all about creativity and connection and the concept of oneness. And I mean, it blows my mind that there are so many people like that, and it's hard to get through to them. And maybe that's a different way of saying it. You know, the physical left brain thinking, you know, all that logical stuff is great and it serves a wonderful purpose. But sometimes we got to get out of that box, if you like, and over into the other side of our brain, which is a little softer and gentler and allows for an expansiveness and an openness and just unlimited possibilities that exist within that part of our brain. And so even if you don't believe in a soul, you can at least, you know, take these two parts of the brain and work with those pieces. And maybe that's another way of approaching it. I certainly know for myself that when I feel like I'm balancing the two sides of my brain and not just being stuck in one or the other, I really truly do feel very much in alignment with my life. I do feel very much in integrity. And that's when I think I feel most connected to my spiritual purpose for being.
Yeah, beautifully said, right? The balance, right? The balance of the yin and the yang, the left and the right, the material and the spiritual, the human and the being. Yeah, and to get those in balance, right? As long as we're in a body with a mind, we can't abandon and just become some spiritual that just sits in a cave and just does nothing. Some people may do that, but that's not the path that most of us have to follow. So we have to come into balance. But the point is, too, of what you said of making them realize or making them wake up. I don't know if that's my job. I mean, I keep trying to come up with bait, you know, this perfect bait that I can throw out there that people are like, oh, and they'll wake up.
Yeah.
They'll want to wake up and they'll want to come, you know, swim in the pool. Mm-hmm. But until then, you act and, you know, you just be and you behave and you write books or you talk or you know, make this available to people so they're aware. And more of us are doing that. There's so many freaking books out right now. Beata mentioned a beautiful book yesterday, which I haven't read, but it's called The Artist's Way.
Oh, I've read it.
And it's a history, yeah. And it's about training your right hemisphere to be creative. And in that, when people pause and get into that creative space, they will naturally kind of question and naturally start to connect, and they'll feel bigger than themselves. And that's where that feeling that there's something else beside themselves, that's where they get inquisitive enough to go seeking and looking and finding the truth. Yeah. Right. So there's something you're absolutely right, setting us on a path of being, you know, open the creative juices. Meditation does it too, in the silence. You know, it's either in the silence or in the creativity, because those are all right brain things. And one more book, and then I'm going on a little bit long here, but My Stroke of Insight. Beautiful book. Again, neuroscientist, a brain scientist, woman, actually had a stroke, which crippled the left side of her mind. And with the left side, with her logic out of commission, she was in this place of such spiritual awakening and realization and feeling and creativity, because the only thing that was working at that point in life was her right hemisphere. And so, you know, what we're talking about too is backed by science. It's just, it's fact. But I don't know, how do we get people to open up?
Yeah, well, you said it a while ago, and I think that part of it has to do with, as you say, running into a brick wall, you know, or getting to a place in your life where maybe things aren't working the way you want them to. Maybe things are just not lining up the way you'd like them to. And so that's when some introspection just naturally starts to happen. And when introspection happens, questions come up. And when questions come up, answers are not that far behind. They may not always come up in the way, or the answers may not always come up in the way that you expect them to, but they do come up. You know, just asking the question puts out to the universe, hey, I'm interested in this. Tell me something about it. And before you know it, the universe will align and provide you with the information. So all you got to do is pay attention after that. And paying attention isn't always the easiest thing to do, because something might look you right in the face and you just kind of look past it. You don't even recognize it until one day, oh, you see it, you know? And so what you're talking about, like the situation with Jill Bolt Taylor, for example, when she had that stroke, the left side of her brain, as you said, was temporarily shut down. And so she had the experience of being in her right brain, which woke her up to all kinds of other possibilities that she probably hadn't really thought about that much, you know? And so I think it's perfect that it happens to a neuroscientist. And she's not the only one. There's another guy I know, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but a brain surgeon who had his own near-death experience. Mm-hmm. He always used to write that off as some kind of just, you know, weird brain synaptic stuff. And then he had his own experience, and of course he still tried to write it off, but there were certain things that happened in his experience that he simply could not explain. And so he started to wonder about this whole spiritual thing. So I think you're absolutely right. Sometimes it takes hitting a brick wall. It might be a soft brick wall for some people, and it might be a rock hard brick wall for others. But either way, some kind of a transition point happens. And so we can invite that in. I'm ready for a transition, you know, and just see what happens.
Uh-huh. And I think most of the people that we talk to here have had some sort of that experience. So they're like, oh yeah, uh-huh. I've had my dark night of the soul, or I'm still in it, or, you know, but trust that that's a good thing. And even if it feels like the worst thing that could ever happen to you, it is the catalyst for the best thing that's ever going to happen to you. And yeah, trust that. And to put this thing out there, David, what you said of like, ask the universe. I start every class with, I guide people on how to ask for something that they really need a change in their life. And some shit happens afterwards. And I tell them, I go, look, here's the rules. Let the seeker seek. When they seek, they'll find. You'll get your answers. But when you find, you're not going to maybe like those answers. And the word is that you'll find trouble. But when you get through that trouble, you'll marvel. So there is the promise that you're going to go through some hard stuff, and it's not going to feel pretty. And the answers you get, you might hate. You're like, what? I asked for this, and I'm getting this in my face, or I, you know, asked for a pat on the back, and I'm getting a punch in the stomach. But that's kind of the process we have to go through, and it's not always pretty, which is why we always talk about getting help, getting a coach, asking, you know, find somebody else who can talk to you about getting you through the trouble. And but ask, you will receive. You may not like the answers, but in the end, that's the ultimate goal of this lifetime, is to make that transition, to shift out of that human race, rat racey mentality into a free, happy, balanced, you know. And not every step of everyone's life is always going to be free and happy and balanced. I'm not promising that, because that's not the way this world is.
That's right.
But if you get 51% going in that arena, okay, that's better than the scale tipping the other way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, I think it's this whole topic, as always, just kind of gets me all excited, as you can see. And I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to understand how to explain this to people who don't they haven't done the kind of work that we have done. They don't necessarily understand in the same way that you and I understand, or in the same way that the people we hang out with understand. I want to still be patient, loving, and compassionate for those people who haven't got to that stage yet. And I'm sure that's true for you too. But at the same time, we want to kind of keep the momentum going in the right direction. And I want to make sure that I keep my own life in balance and aligned the way I want it to be, so that that can maybe be an example for other people.
So first, if your motivation when you wake up in the morning, like mine is to help people through their process, through their journey, with their awakening. I wake up every day, and that's what I'm here on this planet to do. Not every action I go to the supermarket, but no, even the supermarket, I look at somebody in the eyes and I give them a look of recognition. I see people. I know that their soul is in there. I look at somebody through their eyes and I see their soul, and I recognize them just through my head, through my thought. And it shocks people sometimes, but it's a good shock. Yeah. So there's that. And to layer back what you said, what can we do? David, this is the question I ask, and this is my ask, my universal ask that has been out there in the universe for some years now, is there one question or one phrase or something you could say to somebody that'll incentivize them and wake them up and motivate them to start this journey?
Mm-hmm.
So I just said it out in public now. Now my question is out in public and not just buzzing around in my personal energy. But that's what you asked. What can we do to help people with that initial wake up? Maybe they have to hit the bottom. Maybe they have to go through the suffering. I don't know. I'm hoping that there's a way that you can say something, phrase something, present something in a way that somebody who is really stuck in what they were born into the human race, and they're really stuck in that conditioning and in that domestication, that it'll just put a little crack in the door that they'll want to open. So I don't have that answer yet, but.
Well, maybe you do. Maybe you do have the answer, and it's just one of those things that I believe all the answers are there for all of us at all times. And, I do have a very deep spiritual belief system. A lot of the questions that I ask here are kind of hypothetical, devil's advocate kind of questions designed to stimulate the conversation. And I do that on purpose, and I'm sure you've noticed that already. But it's part of the process, I think, because, hey, I'm not perfect, and I still do have an ego. Sometimes I like to indulge my ego too. I won't deny it. Sometimes it feels good. But I'm noticing that as time progresses, I'm having less and less and less and less attachment to that enjoyment, that particular kind of enjoyment. I really like it when my soul is in charge. I really like it when I am following my true path, my true purpose, my true essence, when I'm paying attention to who I really am. I like doing that. And it feels better and better and better each day as I get closer and closer and closer to the full and complete and fulfilled truth of who I really am. And I'm sure that would be true for anybody who opted to do the same thing. So I guess what I'd like to do at this point, Tommy, is I'd just like to ask a simple question. First, how do we figure out who's in charge? And second, how do we get the soul back in charge?
I sometimes talk about an airplane metaphor, and that I don't know where this happened in history, but if you think of yourself as an airplane, this airplane requires a pilot and a co-pilot to fly it. And somewhere along the way, the co-pilot got this brilliant idea that it could handle everything, that it didn't need the pilot anymore, and whacked it on the head, gagged it, bound it, tossed it in the back of the plane. That's your spirit. It's kind of back there, all tied up and gagged. And sometimes it takes the plane starting to crash before the co-pilot goes, oh crap, it goes back and unties it, guys, I need help. Sometimes it's just, something happens in life that you wake up and you realize that what you've done, and not feel guilty about it. What is it? Maybe it's just this talk, David. I mean, the last 20 minutes we've been talking in a very connected, deep, soul to soul way, soul talk, guys, as we do. And perhaps if somebody listening to these 30 minutes will have, the door crack open a little bit. Maybe it's just in honestly dealing with it, and you're asking some brilliantly door opening questions. How can somebody crack open the door a little bit? What does it take? I mean, there are so many teachers, so many books, so many ideas. There's Oprah, there's other people in public, there's Eckhart, there's all these people out there. So the word's getting out, the buzz is out there, so people will catch on to the buzz. It's in the lyrics of songs. People sing about it, write about it in subtle different ways. So you hear it, you see it in movies, and I always will go to The Matrix as a great awakening movie if you watch the movie for other than the kung fu scene. Keep asking the question, man. Keep asking the question, because an answer is going to come.
Well, I think the answer can actually come. So if I ask the question, who's really in charge of my life right now? I may not get a direct answer. I may not get a direct answer to that question, but what I might get is, how am I feeling about my life right now? What am I feeling in my body? If I'm feeling, dissatisfaction, sadness, fear, anger, any of those emotions that are associated with, unpleasantness. If I find myself in my relationships with other people, maybe those are signals, I think, that my ego mind's in charge, that I'm not allowing my spirit to run the show, that I'm letting my ego take over. So that's one way I can tell. On the other hand, if I'm just totally at peace and totally relaxed and everything about my life feels perfect, even though, not all the circumstances are exactly the way I want them to be. If that's the kind of thing that's going on, then maybe the truth is that I really am allowing my soul, my spirit, to run the show. Either way, that's a way for me to figure it out. That's a way for you to figure it out, is just to check in with how you're feeling, how you're experiencing your life right now.
Yeah, I sometimes I trick people sometimes, and they'll say, well, I think this and I'm thinking this and I'm thinking that. I go, well, how are you feeling about that? Even that can set people back, because we're not really, the human race is taught, like you said, all left brain. Feeling is more tied to our emotion, our right hemisphere. But yeah, the logical brain kind of short circuits a bit. And when you ask it how it feels, because it makes people sink in, it makes people drop in. You have to go check. Well, I'm feeling fine. Leave me alone. Mm-hmm. Or and then you go home that night, you're like, that question's haunting me. What do you mean, how do I feel? You bastard.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love your question, David. You asked it right at the beginning of the show. Who's in charge? Who's in charge of your life right now? Yeah, that one, if that one sinks into somebody at the right time, that's a hook that may get them, churning inside. And that's what it takes sometimes, to churn inside enough to start looking for different answers.
Yeah. Well, and Tommy, it really doesn't matter what the answer is. We just talked a little bit about feeling into who's in charge. Noticing, the quality of the emotions that are going on in your life, the kinds of reactions that you have, and that sort of thing. And then saying, well, this would suggest that my ego mind's in charge, or maybe it suggests that my soul is in charge. Whatever it suggests, you now have information. You have the information. As soon as you ask yourself the question, the information is there. Now you can make a choice about it. If you find that your ego is in charge, you can ask yourself another question. Well, how can I bring my soul more into my life? I don't want to kill my ego. I think that's a terrible metaphor. The ego has a very valid purpose. So maybe one of the ways of bringing my soul in is to have my soul just simply love the ego. Man, you're just doing an amazing job. Thank you so much for all you do. I got it from here.
Yep. Starting with that, asking that feeling, because the truth of the matter is, you've said it 4 or 5 times already, and I've said it or implied it. When your spirit's in charge, when that essence is in charge, your soul's in charge, it feels good.
It does.
It feels right.
Yeah.
It feels better. And it was a silly thing in the Bugs Bunny cartoons, wherever they were, you had the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other. But that's, maybe a metaphor you have to look at, like, who's in charge right now? And maybe in your day, it balance changes. Maybe you wake up and, woo, I'm feeling good, and then halfway through your day, I'm angry at something, I'm pissed off, like, oh, I'm caught up in myself again. It's, that's about me. They didn't please me. They didn't make me happy. They didn't meet my expectations. Me. You're screaming me over here on the other shoulder is in charge. And that's just the question to say, okay, right now I'm feeling kind of cranky. Well, ask who's in charge. Mm-hmm. Yep. Logic, selfishness, self-centeredness. It's all about me. Damn.
Well, now I'm going to say, don't say damn, because then you're kind of condemning yourself for just being human.
Good job. Thank you.
This is where, okay, I'm letting my ego run the show right now. Bring that loving energy in and just give it a nice hug.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hugging is the best medicine, man. It is the best medicine. And the hug is the symbol for love and forgiveness and acceptance. So give yourself a hug. And then let your soul continue leading. That's the key.
Great exercise. And hopefully we'll be seeing people all over the streets of LA giving themselves a hug this week in San Francisco, because they tuned in and they now know what the secret is.
And Dublin, too.
All right. I think, oh my gosh, look at the time. And
yeah. So thank you, Tommy, for reminding me. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I just want to let you know that next week we've got 2 amazing ladies joining us. Susie Daggett and Simone Craig are going to join us for a topic that we're calling Soul Talk. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a blast as always. So I hope you'll join us next week. Bye, everybody. Bye, Tommy.
Peace. Bye, everybody.